Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split in two, and figuring out just what is going on is a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we are finishing up Suddenly a Murder by Lauren Muñoz. So this book definitely caught me off guard from where I thought it was going, or what I thought it even was to begin with.
And I will say that in the positive way, to be fair, but like theories-wise, throw them in the garbage.
I don't think it totally swept us, but we weren't really on board for the right plan. And I think it was a murder mystery. I think I said it wasn't last episode, but I think it was.
It is interesting because even when we thought it wasn't really a murder mystery, we were still talking it up so much because it still was so interesting to read. And then it was like, actually, clowns, here you go. It is a murder mystery.
There's definitely a number of times in the first episode where I'm like, oh, like, it couldn't be this. Which I just feel like, I mean, that's the point, right? Like, the author is trying to get you on things where it's like, oh, I'm going to make you think it could never be the thing that it is. And I just feel like such a chump for falling for that.
That's crazy.
Because I know better, you know? It's not my first rodeo. Like, I should have known.
Yeah, I mean, some of the ideas we did have, like me not being sure about the prologue, meaning it was Izzy, like the essence of that being a red herring, like that was close, right? I mean, it is Izzy in that prologue, but it's not because she murdered Blaine, but like we were almost there, just to the left, you know?
Yeah, I know. I really sat there and was like, yeah, I mean, we never really see like the murder happen. We never see the cheating happen, but you know, we're pretty sure. Like, I just let that go.
Yeah. And you did bring this up before we started, like, there are bits of this, like, if you just read this straight through, you probably, and you were actually, like, reading quite closely, I think, you could have figured it out. Or at least some bits of it you could have figured out. But we stopped at a point and started making theories, and we just didn't have enough, right? Like...
Yeah, at least not to get to this level of detail.
We tried our best. But honestly, I fucking love that we were wrong about literally everything. I read the second part of this all in one sitting, and I was I was alone in my like little office at work, and I was so invested. It was just crazy. I could not put it down.
That feels overwhelming, honestly, because I do feel like the second half of this book got a bit emotional and tense, and I don't know, you're also trying to figure out what's going on at the same time, so it couldn't be me one sitting.
No, I had to. I'm a binger, what can I say?
Yeah. If we want to talk more about the theories, there were some things we were close on as far as, you know, we thought Kassidy was going to be like this big mastermind, like putting the pieces together, which wasn't really quite the case, but she was definitely more guilty than was obvious, just taking the book for its word in the first half. So I feel like we were close on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I mentioned in the first episode was the key, where I was like, I think the key is going to get Izzy in trouble because, you know, it's kind of a hole in the story. And the key did end up coming up, but not for getting Izzy in trouble. It just explained how Kassidy ended up going about getting to Blaine.
Right, which, like, that paired with the secret passages... It is true, we only saw one passageway. And I was like, this is fine. But I didn't think about the possibility of more.
Yeah, we were limited in being in Izzy's perspective for that because we knew, and you mentioned last episode that both Kassidy and Marlowe had been to the mansion before and were shown secret passages that were likely to have been shown secret passages. Marlowe confirms that, and then of course Kassidy uses them. So I think it if we paid a little bit more attention to that idea, we probably could have figured that there were more, but with Izzy finding one, it gives you that false sense of security of like, oh yes, like there is a secret passage and we know where it is. Like Izzy's got the secret, which like it wasn't enough.
Right.
And also we shouldn't have, I mean, Izzy, I'll probably mention this later too, but like Izzy is a little overconfident with her moves. So I shouldn't have trusted her to know everything because I didn't believe she knew everything.
Yeah, it's just tough because she is confident and then also she's so freaking guilty. Like she feels so bad and you're like, this is a girl that's killed someone.
Right.
And at first there's debate like, you know, good for her. Some said that. I don't know who, but some. And when we just thought it was, you know, Blaine being the devil, it was fine.
Yeah.
And it made sense for her to feel guilty, but then now I feel bad. Now I feel bad.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think about this change in perspective on Blaine. I mean, Blaine was a little asshole, but there's a good point here in that, like, even if he incited it, like, he was involved with I don't know what word I want to use, but kind of just an illegal situation is what I'll call it. And like, you can't really, even if he was 17, almost 18, I still can't blame him for Mrs. Morales' actions. So it does kind of paint it in a different light. And I think we mentioned, you know, it's not that anyone deserves to die to begin with, but like, I definitely feel worse about it knowing that, even if Blaine was a pain in the ass character.
Right. It's honestly so interesting that it's Marlowe that does all of this, right? Like, we learned from Marlowe that him confronting Blaine wasn't out of anger. It's he told Blaine his brother had OD'd on, was it cocaine, I think? Cocaine that Blaine had sold, and he's honest about that encounter, and Blaine feels so bad about it. And if we have to trust Marlowe in this instance, but also why would he lie at this point? I just don't think he would, but that gives us such insight into, like, yeah, Blaine is a stupid rich kid who's selling drugs, but he didn't think it would turn out like this. And I think that's a very honest experience, and it kind of does shift that perspective in Blaine. And then it's also Marlowe again who confronts Izzy and is like, there will be other Blaines who fall into this situation if you don't say anything. And is one life, like, is it worth Blaine's life for you to be able to live yours? Like, are we weighing lives in that way? And that is the question, right? Like,
yeah. Gosh, yeah, that question is so different because of this too. I'm glad you're bringing that up.
Before we got to what had actually been going on, it was like, I mean, maybe, like, Izzy is being put in such a difficult situation. She's trying to support her family. Blaine has forced her into a situation. Like, we were even thinking maybe the cheating was Blaine kind of using some kind of blackmail. Like, it could have gotten very dark for Izzy in particular in that situation. Just, there were a lot of things that could have happened, and it would have 100% painted Blaine, like, in the negative, or at least, like, 98, maybe 2% on Izzy, whatever. But having it shifted in this way by Marlowe, who we've thought this whole time, like, who has basically said this whole time he hates Blaine because of what he did. It's just another interesting twist that happens, and it's an unnecessary twist. And when they're all at dinner and they're laughing and crying and they go to cheer Blaine, Marlowe is the first one who says to Blaine.
Yeah, I do remember that being weird.
Yeah, I thought it was weird too, but after hearing everything, I don't know. It's just such an interesting thing to write.
It's kind of depressing.
It is. I feel so bad. Like, he was a cheater, right? He was a cheater. He dealt drugs. He was a fool. But he was the child, and I will say child, in this situation, and Mrs. Morales should have fucking known better. Like, what are you doing? Yeah.
This is always, this is interesting for me, because I used to be a teacher, right? And like, just like being in that position, I just don't know how anyone could ever do something like this. And I understand Kassidy's perspective briefly of like, well, like, I know Blaine, like, I wouldn't put it past him that he's the one who incited this to begin with. And I'm just like sure, like, Blaine was not a great person. I can see that being the case, but that is no excuse, right? Like, that doesn't matter really on the Mrs. Morales side. Like, she did that, whether or not it doesn't matter who propositioned who, right? Like, it doesn't matter if Blaine was using it as blackmail or was trying to be evil about it. Look at what she did. Like, that's just it. That is a problem. Like, that, it's not enough to say it. It's not enough even for Blaine to take any blame for it when she made the decision to do it even at all. Just gross.
Right. Plus, like, our opinion of Mrs. Morales shifts so much in the second half of this book.
Oh, yeah.
The things she did. And I understand, like, I guess your husband basically left you. We don't know if there was cheating involved. We don't know if he tried to be amicable about it. We don't know any of that. What we do know is Izzy's dad got deported and ended up, I guess, finding somebody else. And so Izzy's mom took the kids, basically, moved somewhere else, and cut off all communication.
Yeah.
And Pilar was hired, basically, by Izzy's dad to find Kay and Izzy. And it's taken years. And Pilar has always tried to do that. That's why she's there. And I don't, like, the moment, I actually did get emotional. Like, when all of this is explained to Izzy, and then just Pilar saying, like, he died 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I was struck by that. Like,
me too.
And then Izzy even goes into, like, I was imagining all of these scenarios. Like, he would show up one day. He would come to my graduation. He would be there. I would reconnect with him after school. Like, all of these things. And then to hear none of it is going to happen. And, like, the 2 years you were fantasizing about it, he was already gone. Like, oh my God. It was so heartbreaking. And you know your mother has had relations with a student who was also one of your kind of friends, and she also did this.
I mean, yeah, she's just experienced such a large amount of trauma in such a small period of time.
This book got heavy.
It did. I mean, just like they don't even get into like what a traumatic thing it is to have your parent deported, you know?
Yeah.
That's just crazy as it is. And then to have your other parent like kind of, like, I don't know, lie about it, I guess, or at least be weird about it. It's just, I don't know, it's horrible. And to have like no chance to kind of paint over that, right? Because her father is dead. Like, there's just so many aspects of it that make it a tragedy.
And then having it set against this 1920s opulent, rich experience is just so striking.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure none of the kids in this book have even thought about what that experience is like. They haven't had to.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, people go through it every fucking day.
On that happy note.
Yeah, let's put this back on the rails, though, because we talked about a lot. Just to, like, wrap up the past, I think, is a good thing to do. Other than the Izzy stuff. She has a lot more going on. But the flashbacks. We get the Logan party, which is when Blaine mentions he's getting, like, private tutoring, basically, with Mrs. Morales, which was 6 months ago. And we're like, in my head, I was like, that's when the affair started. And I was like, well, I guess I was right. I just didn't know with who. So that was great.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, someone does mention, I don't know if it was in this part of the book, but someone does mention that private tutoring isn't a thing at Marion.
I think it was when Chloe was dropping Blaine off at
That's what I thought.
The Morales apartment. Because that's the excuse Blaine uses. He's like, oh, I have private tutoring with Mrs. Morales. And Chloe's like, that's not even a thing. And that's why she thinks Izzy and Blaine are hooking up. But she was right. She just got the wrong Morales.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So another hint. Another hint. Not that we would have known.
Yeah. And then most of the flashbacks after, like, that one-off is at Blaine's lake house, which is 2 weeks ago, which is kind of the last actual party these kids have. Because this one's miserable, but even this lake house one isn't great. Izzy at this point is already upset with Blaine because they've had their fight. Marlowe is coming to confront Blaine. I was like, oh my God, he's gonna murder him at this lake house. Turns out it was a wholesome experience. And also Marlowe is still, like, into Izzy. Yeah.
I have to give Marlowe some credit for getting a little less weird over time. Like, the weirdest was definitely him, like, just like sitting around at the bookstore, I think. But like afterwards, I feel like, oh, his character is developing, and maybe I still don't understand why they're like crushing on each other, but he at least seemed more normal.
I'm glad. There is still some weird stuff. He does know some things that he probably shouldn't. The Izzy, like, secret makes sense. He accidentally found out about that.
Yeah,
the saltines is still a little weird, but that's okay. I guess if she eats them every day, you eventually notice.
Yeah.
Him sitting at her work, I thought was kind of nice. Like, they have some good banter for a moment in the bookstore, but it does seem very much... Yeah, it does seem very much like Izzy's just not allowed to talk to anybody. Everybody at that job seems to fucking hate her for some reason. So him just having to kind of sit in her presence seems like a necessity for her to keep her job.
Well, then, yeah, I mean, this is hopping ahead a little bit. Like, at one point in the story, she's kind of just sitting next to Marlowe doing nothing. Was that during a flashback? I thought it might have been at the mansion, but she's just like, it's so nice to just, like, be present in like be present while nothing is happening with Marlo, which is just so funny because I feel like you kind of need to have something there first before you can appreciate nothingness with someone. But she just hopped right into it. It's like, I know I was like making fun of them, but like her thing about Marlo really is the nothing part. It's really like the chill, like not anything's going on. Like she was kind of into the sitting in silence.
Yeah, but they're in a weird situation in which a lot of things are happening. I do agree. It's a very simple relationship. Like, they don't engage in a lot of deep conversation, but maybe pulling back the curtain a little bit. I don't know if they could. Like, I don't know if this is the situation in which they get into any of that.
That's fair, yeah.
And with everything going on, you kind of just need a minute to, like, to bask, you know, in the nothingness, which is kind of what you want a relationship to have. Like, you do want those elements. And I agree, usually you get there a little bit later, but they kind of, like, jump-started into one of the most intense situations for a couple to go through, I think. So
absolutely, yeah. Well, one could hope that things will develop more naturally when he's flying his private plane to Mexico.
Which is a sweet thought, but also please just, you know, get first class.
Right,
in an actual flight.
Something. Okay, yeah, what else with this party?
Chloe gets called a loose rubber band.
Oof.
Which, first of all, I would fucking kill Nestor myself.
Yeah, dude. Who was it that calls him out, though? Was it Ellison?
Ellison. Yeah, Ellison, like, grabs his hand and, like, squeezes it, which, like, again, Ellison, he needs to go to some anger management, like, therapy, for sure.
Yeah.
But he does call him out immediately.
Yeah, for sure. And he specifically addresses that, right? I'm like, oh, you think it's okay to just sleep around with women and then shit on them, right? Like, yeah. He was very direct about it. Ellison does very much speak like a straight man, though. Like, when we get towards the part of the book, like where it's coming out that he and Fergus hooked up at the mansion, or outside of the mansion, I suppose. Like, he says things like, I'm tapping a theater kid, and like, I don't know, just like weird language. It maybe feels performative, but it's weird and gross. So I know he is a bisexual character, but he definitely speaks like a straight one.
Yeah, I just think he's a little cringe, but yeah, he's also like 17, 18.
Yeah, and he's like an athlete and stuff, so.
But we do get Ellison kind of confronting that feeling of Izzy and Fergus not caring about his rowing and seeming to just like him for him, which is, you know, how it should be, and also kind of a cliche realization. But it is nice, I guess, to have that confirmation that he does kind of have a more genuine connection with Fergus. He still choked Fergus out, so that's not great, but they're working on it, I suppose.
I do think it's funny that they're both written to be kind of angry folks.
That could go badly, but
yeah, it doesn't bode well for the future.
If Ellison fires his mother as his agent and goes to therapy, and Fergus should have less problems now that Blaine is dead, it might be okay. They might make it.
But you know, there's going to be other Blaines, so.
I know. The last thing about this party is it is kind of like a party. Like, it's interesting to see these kids in a party environment. Yeah, it feels so different. Especially Izzy. Izzy feels like a completely different character.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think that is because she has guilt in both of these instances, but we've never gotten to see her kind of act more naturally with these people that are supposed to be her friends. And we're also getting, like, outside perspective of what she's like.
Yeah, there are some references to what is different about this party versus others, right? Like, obviously she has information about Blaine that is making her behave differently around him, and like she decides to go into the lake, which she usually doesn't do because she wants to be further away from Blaine. I think is it Ellison that shows up late and is like, I don't feel like you're usually the sort of person who would like go into the lake. So there are definitely things that suggest that this Izzy in the party isn't typical, though it is mentioned that she does typically drink. Like, I don't think that's out of the question. So it's kind of hard to tell what is normal for her with the information we have. But I agree that it felt off based on what we know about Izzy and following her around for most of the story.
Yeah, and at first I thought it was like a problem, like, but you really do have to think this is all from Izzy's point of view, except for these flashbacks. So there's going to be dissonance in that regard. And then also, Blaine is dead, so she's going to be even more fucked up than she was at that party. Especially if she feels partially responsible for the fact that it happened.
Right.
It does make sense. It was kind of sad. Like, Kassidy describes it as like the last, right? The last party. Because it kind of is. And she has this planned, basically. She talks to Marlo about having this 1920s party planned for Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, even this 1920s party, they didn't get another party after this lake party. So it really was the end.
Yeah.
Investigation-wise, obviously, Izzy is still hiding out in the secret passageways. She even brought like a pillow and like a blanket so she can be more comfortable. Understandable. So we kind of get information about what's going on, obviously. We find out about things found in Blaine's room, including the armoire. There's Blaine's watch was found in there, which we later will discover has some of Fergus's hair in it, which is questionable. Marlowe's cufflink was found, which is probably what Marlowe had been looking for when he stopped by that night. I think also at some point there's like confirmation of fingerprints in the armoire, which I think match Izzy's, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Is this, yes. Do these happen after Izzy has dropped the letter or no?
I think so. I think Izzy drops the letter after the first set of interviews, if I remember correctly. Which those first set, we finish Ellison and Chloe's. Nothing really happens. The only thing is, like, Ellison is the one that brings up Izzy and Blaine possibly having something going on, which he heard from Chloe. Chloe doesn't even mention it. That was interesting. But yeah, there is a bit, though, with Chloe, or not Chloe. There is a bit with Izzy writing down a list of questions to kind of help, quote unquote, help the investigation. It gives kind of more blame on everybody else because it's like, oh, this person is sleeping with this person and this they argued this time. So she writes out a list of questions about these kind of situations that the police wouldn't know, but obviously she would, and she disguises her handwriting, or she thinks she does.
Yeah, that part. She thinks she's so clever.
Yeah. They use the questions, but it's like not that big of a deal.
You know what I'm thinking about too with this situation is Izzy is obviously trying to take the heat off of herself, but given that we know now she wasn't the murderer, does she understand who she might have been putting the heat on? You know, like, does she have her own idea of who the murderer is?
I don't think she knows. I don't think she finds out until, like, remembering the bracelet moment. I think she's just trying to complicate things so much that they don't solve it.
Yeah, I guess I get that.
Yeah, I think with a conversation with Marlowe, he's like, do you even want the police to solve this? And she's like, no, I wish it would just go away.
That's true.
So I don't think she knows. I think if they found the knife, she would be the biggest suspect because it's her knife. So it's kind of a situation of she knows she's number one within this house.
Yeah.
And so she needs to create, like, chaos everywhere else.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think, yeah, she definitely doesn't. If she had thought it was Kassidy, I don't think she would be doing all of this. Especially given how, like, sick she feels when she finds the bracelet situation. Yeah,
I think we would have gotten the Kassidy-Izzy conversation sooner. I don't think Izzy would have kept it to herself if she did know. But interview-wise, Ellison, we find out, had private tutoring with Benson, which is the physics teacher that died. So people thought something had gone on there because private tutoring is not done, and it's a little weird. But people were questioning if, like, something else had been going on with their relationship, which Ellison denies, obviously, but also, why would you say it did?
Yeah, I'm sure he definitely wouldn't want to come out with that, yeah.
Yeah, but that is kind of like a bit of a seed that private tutoring could lead to some questionable relations.
Yeah,
illegal
I mean, people definitely
relations.
saw his thing that way, so yeah, that was like a really good seed to plant for us that we missed.
Right.
I guess they don't ever really confirm for us whether or not that was the case, like whether or not there was something shadier about that, but I think we were to assume that it was normal.
Yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't, he's dead now. Like,
yeah,
would it matter? If Ellison wants to keep it private, that's his business.
That's true. Well, I guess there's the benefit of, like, the potential benefit of the school knowing that was the case, so that way they might crack down on it.
I mean,
especially given that it is actually happening to with another teacher. But no, yeah, you're right. Probably not. Like, I understand the sort of risk benefit thought process.
This is gonna sound terrible. It's easy to arrest Mrs. Morales because she is Hispanic
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't fit into like the demographic of this school, and also is a woman.
Yep.
So,
Oh, don't even get me started on this.
but
Yeah.
Benson, we don't know about him. So it could have been a different situation entirely.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of dark and grim, but
Yep.
oh well. But he's dead, so if he was doing something, good riddance.
Mm-hmm.
We do get a catalog eventually of things still missing. We obviously know the knife is still missing, which is what Izzy is like worried about, which is really why she's listening to these interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Blaine's phone, the burner phone, is still missing, and we learn there was a diamond pressed into Blaine's body, so that is missing from something. So we kind of get interviews that discuss that.
Yeah, they really focus in on the diamond once that is noticed, I suppose.
Right.
Like everyone's getting questions about diamond-related things.
Yeah, it makes sense because you have multiple people that have been in Blaine's room, or could have been in Blaine's room, and the police don't have a warrant to search the rest of the house. So they just kind of have to catalog who has diamonds. We know Marlowe does because of his cufflinks, and he is missing a diamond from those cufflinks, I will say, which isn't great. Fergus has like a, what is it, a flask or like a cigarette case, which he thinks might have diamonds, but they're fake, so it's fine. And Kassidy has a bracelet that has diamonds on it. But according to her, she lost it in the ocean.
Right.
And you know what? I believed it.
I did too. I did too. I did think it was important that it was specifically pointed out that Izzy does not have one, right? Like from the bat, because this is really the moment where she, I think, is fully cleared.
Yeah, I was like, it still could have been something if Marlowe like dropped his cufflink and the diamond fell out, and then Blaine's body falling to the ground caused the diamond to like,
right,
you know, stab into him. It could have been that, and I was like, oh, I thought it was a lie.
Like the police were lying.
Yes, because they knew Izzy was listening, and they knew Marlowe had lost a diamond, so they were hoping Izzy would confess to save Marlowe. But obviously that's not the case.
Make more sense if she actually had done it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we do get a scene in the first part, which we just skipped over. We were like, this is whatever. We don't need to talk about this. Where Izzy, like, finds Kassidy's bracelet and puts it away for her in the drawer. We see that. We're there for that.
It did feel like a whole lot of nothing, that scene, though.
For sure. It was like, oh, Izzy's just being nice and taking care of her friend.
Yep. Good job, author.
Yeah, for sure. Like we said, if you just read this book entirely through, you have the pieces. They exist to figure both crimes out, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't think it was worth anything.
People always feel this bad about their brains after reading mystery.
It's just so beautifully planned.
Yeah. So the interviews wrap up, and Izzy makes a dramatic decision to call the anonymous police tip line, which it kind of makes you think she's calling in herself as the murderer through an anonymous tip line, which feels a little weird because there's like just cops around everywhere for her to, well, cops being two, for her to like confess to. So another kind of artful move on the author, because you think that's what it is, but maybe you're confused about it. But I definitely didn't think it was what she was actually calling in, which was the Blaine and her mom situation. Also crazy because you get a sense once you figure out what this is of how heavy this is for her and like why she wanted to keep it a secret, and that it's going to change her life if her mom goes away to prison. Like she's going to have to take care of her sister. At this point in time, she doesn't really know of any other family members aside from her core three. So it's kind of wild that she gets to this point where she's like, no, I just need to say something, and maybe has listened to Marlowe's thoughts on how this affects, or would have, I don't know how to say it, how this affects Blaine's life when he had one. So
yeah, because this is after the Marlowe and Izzy, I guess, fight, basically. Because Izzy has cared so much this entire time about keeping this a secret. Like, she wants it to stop, obviously, and that's why she was threatening Blaine. But she doesn't want it to get out because, I mean, if her mom goes to jail, it's just her and Kay. She thinks her dad is, like, not an option. She doesn't even know about her dad's side of the family, which she does have. Quite genuinely, she has nobody, and she does have to take care of Kay. Like, we've understood this motivation the entire time, which is why we thought she would kill Blaine herself.
Also, just so you know, the sister's name is Kaye.
Fuck, I've been saying it all this whole time.
I didn't catch
My
you
whiteness
until you
is
said
showing.
it this time. I honestly I didn't know how it was spelled until either you put it in the doc or something, but I thought it was spelled differently just from the way it was said in the audiobook.
Okay, but like yes, call me a fool, to be honest, but you have a Kate's and then
Yeah. I hear you. I've never heard this name before, so like I thought there's a town in Puerto Rico called Calle with like a Y at the end of that name. So that's kind of what I was like, maybe it's like Calle the town, but it's Calle. I just, it was new to me. I'm sure people have this name, but I had never heard of it.
well, just pretend I'm every future teacher of this girl.
Yeah. Honestly.
Regardless, motives make sense. But yeah, Marlo is right. If Mrs. Morales was willing to do this once, what's to say she won't do it again? Or even that she hasn't done it before.
Right. I thought that was like such a good point from, I think Izzy's the one who says that, right? Like you can't let it go even if Blaine is dead or whatever. It's such a big deal to, and I know this has kind of pulled it out of her, but it's such a big deal that this happened. She really, I don't know. It's really good that she's saying something.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because she has the control to not, right? Like she knows how this is going to affect her. She knows like if I do, it's on me. But at the same time, like, I don't know, it's just like she didn't put herself in that situation, right? Like her mom is the one who put her in the situation, but it's not like someone came from the outside and like followed it through. Like she has to be the one who's like, oh, my mom already ruined this. And in order for the ruin to be fully realized, I have to say something.
She has to take responsibility for this entire situation. And it's like, she's also just 17, 18. Like,
right.
What a terrible position. And to think you're also alone in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because she doesn't know yet. I mean, Marlo is like, I will help you. I'll give you all this money. Like, it'll be fine. Which is nice. But there is always that. I think Izzy does mention, like, this money would be a drop for Marlo. Like, it would be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something kind of just like, I don't know how to describe it, distasteful. It's nothing for him, but it is life-changing for somebody like Izzy.
Yeah.
It's just such a weird dissonance. And it make their relationship so just
Yeah, it feels imbalanced, right?
Yeah.
I get her resistance to it. That it makes a lot of sense to me, even if it's the easy answer, you know.
Which again, eat the rich, but could you date somebody like that who it's like financial dependence, right? Like you never want to be in that kind of situation.
Exactly.
Rough.
And I feel for her too on the like my future is like, especially with how much weight gets put onto like something like going to an Ivy League school. Like there's so much like, oh, this could change my life, right? Even if it's not promised, like there is so much pressure behind that. And for her to not, I get why she doesn't want to lose that. And like how someone could be convinced that not saying something is the right answer because it at least lets me continue to have my future, you know?
Right. It's such a messy but deep conversation about how many of these situations actually happen.
Yeah.
Like even with the Ellison situation, we still don't know if it happened or not.
Mm-hmm.
But him thinking about his image and he's supposed to go to the Olympics, like, but once you're kind of a victim, you're always a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And her being in this situation, she is basically smearing her own name.
Yeah.
She will be connected to this.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said too about, yeah, like the other versions of this that happen, like could very much involve like blackmail or something else that makes it even more complicated. Like in this case, it just happens that Izzy has gotten herself into an Ivy League school and that complicates it. But that was just by chance, right? Like there's probably other situations of this where there is a more active effort from the abuser to put other people's lives at risk. Say like, you know, the classic like I can ruin you type of story, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we almost see a little bit of something there when Miss Morales says that line of like, you need to really keep Kassidy around. Like you don't find friends like that just anywhere kind of thing. Because now in hindsight, I feel a little bit weird about that because I wonder if she's implying, I know you know what's going on here. And if you say something that could ruin your friendship with Kassidy, you know, as almost like a subtle blackmailing of her own.
I mean, we do see Kassidy's way too loyal, like to a fault, for both Blaine and Izzy.
Oh, yes.
So it would have been would have been a tough situation. I don't know what she would have chosen in that situation.
Yeah, I guess in this version, we just know that she knows what's going on herself. But yeah, it's hard to say what the alternative was. I guess the thing is, right, she kind of tells us directly that she knows what Blaine is capable of. So hopefully that would put her on the right side of things.
Also, her reaction to finding out both about the affair and how it's affected Izzy is to murder Blaine. So
Right. Good point. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's especially sad about this story is that Kassidy, I mean, effectively throws away her life for Blaine, you know? Like, just like going through years of the cheating situation and then making this choice that would inevitably ruin her life because of how frustrated she is with his actions. So it's kind of sad to see that.
And it's crazy because they got together like their freshman year. She didn't get to like do anything.
Right. Be a teenager.
Right. And like high school sweethearts are fine or whatever. They do work out sometimes. But like Blaine obviously did not want to be locked down in a relationship.
Mhm.
That was quite clear. Kassidy did hold on a little bit too tight there. And Blaine did let it continue. It's just, I just feel so bad.
Yeah.
But Pilar does end up catching Izzy coming out of the secret tunnels, and she's obviously known the whole time that they're there and that Izzy was in them listening, and it's totally chill. And they kind of work through together the timeline of events, which honestly was needed because I forgot.
Yeah, I agree.
I forgot. In the first part, I mentioned Cass being sedated. Like, there was an opportunity for something to happen there. And again, I was off, but only slightly to the left there. Because there is the moment when Izzy is in the bath and Cass naps, apparently. But that is plenty of time for something to occur. Mm-hmm. So that must have been, like, the window I was thinking of. I just forgot how long the bath was, I guess.
She did say she was in there for longer than she could remember.
Yeah, because she fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And she, in the first interview, is like, oh, Kassidy couldn't have left because I would have heard her. And we thought that was weird because she just said the pipes were loud. And you also brought up the key, like, and Pilar mentions this later as well, like, how did Kassidy leave a locked room? That's the mystery, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just forgot about, like, how big of a gap of time that was.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe we should have caught that one because we were suspicious of Kassidy. Like, that really was the moment. Like, there was no reason to trust that Kassidy would have stayed put. And she does ask about the key, right? So, like, that's suspicious. Like, why was she even checking, you know? I don't know. I guess it's normal to want to leave a room, but we didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. So, again, opportunity to solve it was there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this still isn't, like, the moment it clicks for Izzy yet, but I'm sure by this point, Pilar knows who it is. Basically, as it's described later, Izzy does plant the knife and a letter, basically saying, like, I know you and my mom are hooking up, stop that, or I'll kill you, kind of thing, you know? And Kassidy goes in, and she finds that. So that's how she figures out about the Mrs. Morales-Blaine situation, and also how Izzy is feeling about it. And yeah, that's when she kills him with the wash bowl and then also stabs him with the knife. So we were right. It was a very angry, violent murder because she was probably very angry. So
yeah. Interesting about this too is how my suspicion. I had a light suspicion that I didn't commit to in the first episode that more than one person would try to kill Blaine, and that's not really what happened, but my thought process was that something else happened other than the stabbing, which is still true.
It is, yeah.
Something else other than the stabbing did happen to kill him. The stabbing was just like icing on the cake. However, it was just one person. So
yeah. So the Izzy Pilar relationship is very interesting. Like, at first I thought going through the timeline was, I mean, Birds of Prey, kind of Pilar just playing with her food and being like, I know it's you, but, you know, we'll play a little bit. But there are some weird, like, we knew they were connected in some way.
Yeah.
We thought they were related. I mean, kind of close, basically.
Mm-hmm. I thought there was an opportunity that she was the other girl for her dad.
Interesting. Yeah. But there are some, like, mentions of Izzy used to be in Chicago, and Pilar apparently had a kidnapping case in Chicago.
Yeah, definitely did not connect those dots myself.
Which she'll later say is it wasn't really like a kidnapping, it was more like a missing persons. And they both have family in the restaurant business, and they both mention salsa, which, I mean, go off. So I was like, too many things are clicking here.
Yeah.
I still thought they might have been related, but
It wasn't far off.
it was not far off. If in a universe where Izzy actually spent time with her father and her aunt, there was a universe in which she would call Pilar her aunt. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
they were basically family.
Yeah,
so.
right. Because she was like besties with her aunt, so I could see that for sure.
And then this is when we kind of get the whole mom took the kids. Izzy's dad has died. She still has family in Mexico who wants to see her and is like offering to take her in over the summer, but it might be longer for them considering everything else going on.
Right.
But very much still have a very strong support system, because even Pilar is like, I will help you with your sister, like I know some doctors, like we can figure it all out, like it'll be fine.
Yeah, I was really confused for a while on like why she was still engaged in this case after she mentioned the dad was dead for 2 years. And so like, seeing all of that kind of pay off with this was nice.
So there's no crime being covered here. It's just like understood Izzy didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason Pilar is there is because Izzy's name came up. Isadora Morales is slightly less common, so it was flagged.
Yeah, I'm glad that it paid off, that there was some sort of connection, because it was a little hard. We had our eyebrows raised, but it was hard to know what that connection could possibly be.
But it's nice that we kind of got the wrap up to 2 crimes, or 3, I guess, in this scenario.
I didn't even think about that.
The murder, the kidnapping, and the teacher-student relationship. So,
oof. Miss Morales. 2 of the 3 crimes. She had me in the first half.
I know. We were like, she's so real for this.
I was really like
yeah. What a good woman.
Yeah, like I was rooting for her as like, oh, like she had 2 kids, but then like had this horrible thing happen where her husband was deported and decided she'd go back to college and get a STEM degree, which like go off, and then it's like teaching in this private school where all these rich kids go, like making a living for her family, taking care of her disabled kid. Her other kid is like ramping up to go to Brown. Like, man, like go off. Like, love to see this, like Latina woman going off, and then had to be this way, huh? It's just sad.
It's sad and entirely fucking wild that this is how it went.
Yeah, and just too, like, I mean, I know there's other criminals in this book, right? Like Kassidy and her father, as it turns out. But it's just a shame where in a book where it's like, I mean, maybe there's some diversity minority-wise, but like we're the one like poor family, the head of household of that family is a twice over criminal. It's not what I want to see. It's not the representation I want to see, but it's fine. I'll let this one pass because it wasn't like, at least the author is Latina, like it doesn't feel like a slight. It just is unfortunate, I there's room for this story.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah, because I mean we did note like this situation versus the Benson possible situation, like how those might be handled differently, like, and the fact that it's Mrs. Morales isn't great, but again, the author is also Latina, so
and it can't be overlooked what is said on that side. Like Pilar even says, because of who your mom is and the community that she's within, like she's going to be treated worse than someone else who did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that it's a good that she did it, right? Like we are not looking for more diversity on the criminal side, but she makes a good point that still has an effect even for people who have done bad things.
Yeah, and I think the end of this book ends in a way that kind of doesn't shit on like the fact that Izzy is Mexican. Like the book ends with her reconnecting with that part of herself.
Yeah,
like she realizes for so long she's tried to be a Marian kid, and now she is like 98% sure she's going to move to Mexico, and she might even go to school there, and she's going to kind of immerse herself in her family there. And I don't know. I also got a bit teary-eyed at that because it's just, what a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
I think in media, it's so easy, I mean, in media and in reality, right, to paint Mexico as kind of this place you don't want to go to for some reason. That's kind of the American perspective. I guess unless you want to, like, commit crimes or drink underage if you live close to the border, whatever.
there's definitely a select few reasons people are fans of. Yeah,
Right, but it is
they'll still shit on it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Like,
Mhm.
and sure, it has its problems, but America, have you seen it? Like,
Right.
it's not doing so hot either. And
Yeah.
people live there, and they go to school there, and they
Yeah.
make their life there. And why should Izzy be any different?
Mhm.
Especially if her family is there.
Yeah, no, it was really nice to see the like, because one of my first thoughts was like, what will happen to them, right? Like, will someone take them in? Like, will the aunt take them in? Was actually my first thought when this was going down. Once we learned of her existence, so it's really nice to see that connection be made available, and like I hope that just means that Izzy's going to be able to kind of just make her own decisions without those sort of influences on being a certain type of kid. And I mean, and part of me hopes that she still decides to go to Brown and just be based out of Mexico, but like whatever it is that she decides to do, hopefully it's with clearer eyes.
Yeah. At the very least, she'll be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And she won't have to be so worried about her sister because there are people there for her.
And you're totally right too with the family connection, right? Like she'll be able to connect with her father's family, and that's not necessarily a good replacement for having a relationship with her father, but she can't have that now, and being able to have this instead is really good.
Right. Before we get to wholesome ending, though, there is wrapping up the murder investigation, which I guess before that, Izzy finds the bracelet. She knows who's done it, obviously. But before anything can be done about that, we have a meeting with the detectives. Everything is laid out. We get answers for everything, actually. There's the weird moment of Ellison sneaking off to the woods we see. I thought he might be using the burner phone, but turns out him and Fergus were just hooking up in the woods.
Amazing.
Which is whatever.
I was like, oh, he's still going, huh? After all that.
He's even described as like the gardener caught them.
Oh my god.
And was like so
yeah,
not about it. I feel so bad for the staff.
Yeah, dude. I think we could tell from the start that they were gonna have a bad time.
Yeah.
The fact that she was like, and the gardener said that he'll make sure you are not invited back here. Not that he needs to be worried about that.
Regardless, that's figured out. The Ellison, he puts something in his pocket when he's by Blaine's body. Turns out it's just his ring. He got blood on it, and it's like it's a pretty important ring. I can't remember if it's like a class ring or a rowing.
Like a championship ring of some sort.
Right. So he needed to get that cleaned. That also I think had diamonds in it, but none of them were missing.
Mm-hmm.
But it did have blood on it, so that went in his pocket. The Chloe vial was just an itching solution she made for Blaine, which didn't matter because Blaine didn't actually clean himself anyway.
I thought that was so hilarious.
As all teenage boys do.
She was like, she overestimated the cleanliness of her teenage boyfriend,
Crazy.
Like, man, good point.
So funny.
That's hilarious. Poor Chloe. I feel bad that she got the STI and stuff, but her decision to do this in response is hilarious.
Honestly, as she should. And then we also get the wash bowl being declared the murder weapon, which surprises Izzy. She even jumps up. She's so surprised. I was like, oh my god. And also, girl, sit down.
Yeah.
You look guilty as hell.
Yeah, right. I was literally like, I was gardening in the back listening to the rest of this book and was like, I have to stop because I'm just like in shock.
The end of this book is like so quick beats. Like, everything happens.
It was like, like chapter 40, maybe chapter 40 onward. I was just like left and right. It like felt like I was being slapped in the face by this book. So yeah, the wash bowl came as a surprise. And in general, we didn't really see the details behind the murder itself, both including like Kassidy doing the murder and what happens when Izzy goes into the room, which we see like the prologue scene of. These things threw us off a little bit for sure, and I think this was an intentional choice from the author to leave these things out so that way we would mess up what they were going for. But yeah, since we didn't end up actually seeing Blaine, we only saw Blaine's body after the death actually happened. There was really like, there's no way for us to fully catch that Izzy wasn't the one who did it. The murder weapon was like a huge surprise for that reason. So
yeah.
And these are the things where I'm saying like, it's like that was like I pointed out in the first episode there were scenes we didn't see, and then I just let them slide without any further analysis. Like these are the parts that someone more adept with the mystery probably would have caught.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like we're going to get more information from Pilar, but instead, storm that has been stewing and brewing for the whole book, it feels like, which I thought was just like a cheap, like, ooh, tension is building, like, reference, actually literally, like, breaks into the house. So I wasn't sure how much of it broke. At least the windows were busted through and everyone is thrown into panic. It almost felt like more than just windows broke, but I couldn't really tell with how chaotic it was.
Yeah, I think the lights went off too because it was dark. I think Izzy makes her way to the secret passage and is able to get through, or she goes out some way. She gets out of the space somehow. She does note Kassidy is gone.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why she runs off anyways, because Kassidy is gone.
Right. So we get the movie moment. And I didn't bring it up in the first part, but I did feel like we were going to have moments in this book that kind of mimicked their favorite movie. Like, I thought we might see somebody throwing the knife off the cliff. Izzy mentions that scene in particular. I thought we'd see something like that. We kind of do. Kassidy mentions she broke Blaine's phone and threw it off the cliff.
Yeah.
Izzy had also been looking for the phone because of the messages between Blaine and Mrs. Morales that were on it. Back when she was still trying to keep it all a secret, that is. So we get that kind of scene told to us, and then this scene happening here is similar to the movie in that one of the characters, Izzy, is like looking on, and the other one kind of throws themselves off the cliff. And we're like, oof.
Yep.
But before that, we get confirmation. Izzy is, she knows at this point, but it's confirmed to us. Kassidy is the one that killed Blaine because she found the letter and the knife, and she feels terrible. Not because of the Blaine bit, more so because of what it's done to Izzy.
Right.
And it is, like, this is such a honest showing of how loyal Kassidy is. Like, it is an intensity that we don't really get to see. Like, the reason we thought the mastermind plot was happening was because Kassidy is intense like this. She's like, I'm planning this for Izzy. Everything is for the two of us.
Yeah.
Like, this is for I want Izzy to have what she wants. Like, it felt very heavy, but also it is kind of just this genuine sisterhood between them, where Kassidy just wants Izzy to be happy and to get what she wants. And, like, she was angry about the Blaine situation, but also she understood how this would ruin things for Izzy.
Yeah.
So she did kind of do it for them.
Yeah, she just, when she was saying that at the time, like in those early parts of the book, she obviously hadn't planned to do all this. So it was interesting how it suggested the truth of what happened without actually being about that.
Yeah, it showed at least that Kassidy was capable, I guess.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
doing
Like the
something
type of person
this.
she was could lead to this.
Right.
Yeah. Which I'm also glad that paid off. I'm also glad that the movie stuff paid off to some degree. I'm going to talk about how I don't like this scene in a moment, but I'm glad it was worth something because the movie thing was starting to feel weird and out of place after some time because it stopped being referenced outside of like, we're wearing 1920 stuff all the time and it's weird because this is serious, but having some aspect of the plot of this movie in a book matter was useful because otherwise I wouldn't have understood why it was included.
Yeah, I kind of think thematically it played very nicely because, I mean, yeah, Kassidy and Izzy are like the only two people that care about it, but towards the end of this book, they were like, let's pretend for tonight that we're in this movie again and things are fine and Blaine's not dead and like everything's perfect. And I think there is an element to their life, both of them, where they just pretended about everything. Izzy wanted to be a Marion kid, or she thought she did, and she also has to pretend to be capable of killing somebody when she threatens Blaine. And Kassidy, she's planned her entire future with Blaine out, and she has to pretend that it's going to be worth it, and that he's going to stop cheating, and it's going to work out. And
right.
They have found like a genuine connection with each other, but they are both just actors playing these characters. And I think they're only real with each other. And I think the film kind of sets up the clue and like the murder mystery vibes of the book in kind of like a framing aspect. But I think for these characters, it doesn't matter to anybody else. Like, they don't care about the movie. They don't care about the 1920s. Like, it doesn't matter to them. But for these two, this event was about pretending that everything was great, that they could have one last party and there would be no tension and things would be good, and then reality kind of struck and it ruined it for them.
Kind of a beautiful parallel, honestly.
Thank you. I tried. I mean, the author wrote it. I feel like I put it into words that I hopefully made sense.
No, I'm glad you did, because yeah, that honestly adds a lot of value to it. The only other thing I think I'll really say about this scene is that I saw where this was going once they were up on the cliff, but I really didn't like it. Like, I didn't like that they had this, first of all, it broke our theory, or it confirmed our theory that no one was going to get arrested. But it's really hard. How do I put this? The author did a lot of good work on justifying why Kassidy felt like this was the right way to handle things, like to throw herself off the cliff, right? Like, as far as her father, was going to be in court, and like they weren't really actually going to have, like, she was going to end up being in jail, her dad was going to be in jail, like they weren't really going to have like the monetary support they actually needed to get her a good lawyer and stuff. Like, there's just like, and like she was going to be a murderer forever no matter what her sentence was. Like, there were so many reasons that she made this decision, and yet like I still found myself being like, I just don't feel like that was right. And like that feeling almost like Izzy would have fought harder for it, even if I understand that Kassidy was going to make the decision anyway. And then maybe I just didn't believe that Kassidy would make that decision either. There's just this, I think it was just like a risk the author took, and I think it didn't work for me, but probably works for a lot of people. It's just something that I personally was like, I don't know if this was a necessary inclusion in the book. And maybe I just like have like a sensitive spot about suicide, but it just like I didn't have a good feeling about this part.
No, I understand what you mean. I think it's a very delicate line, right, between romanticizing suicide and portraying it accurately. I think because this book plays into the dramatics and kind of like they have this end as a mystery, even still. Like, Kassidy's body hasn't been found yet. There's not confirmation she died, but we could say with 99% certainty she did. And the reasoning she does it makes sense. It paints a very beautiful image of this kind of old school black and white movie. It makes sense in that regard, but it's like she still killed herself. That's not beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's just tragic. And I think it is okay to feel that way about it. I think it's difficult because I think Kassidy wanted it to be beautifully tragic.
Right.
And so that's what the author wrote it as, because, I mean, Kassidy, that's what, she kind of created it that way. And it does make sense within the book.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you don't understand, like, that disconnect, like, yes, it's beautifully tragic, and you can almost see it, but it's not. It's just tragic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're still kind of, like, almost immersed in that 1920s feel, you're supposed to be within the, like, if you're caught up in it, she died, but she died by her own hand. Like, she made something beautiful out of all of this nonsense. Like, if you get caught up in that, then I think you do romanticize what happened a bit. And I think that's what Kassidy wanted, but the reality of it is, it's just fucking sad.
And there's maybe a point to get back to the author here, is that in the discussion that Izzy and Bilal have towards the end, she says, I can understand why Kassidy would potentially choose to end her life, but her life, she may have seen her life as not having value, but it did. And so I kind of appreciated that as kind of a caveat to it.
And I think that, along with what we know about Blaine, like, how do you weigh a life? How do you value them? Even though Blaine did something bad, he was still the victim in regards to the relationship, but he still did cheat with Chloe, and he sold drugs, and, like, he did bad things, but his life still had value.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Kassidy. She did this one bad thing, and it was a pretty bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
She did kill somebody, but your life can still have value after that.
Yeah.
There's always the opportunity to change if you're still alive. As soon as you take that off the table, there's nothing else.
Yeah, that's all.
Like, she will always be a murderer, and she won't be able to change that perspective to anything else because she's taken away that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you catch that bit of it, But it is kind of, yeah, it's rough because of the kind of beautiful landscape we've painted around this entire situation, and the way Kassidy justifies it in her own head and to us. It gets a little close. It does ride that line. Yeah. And I do think it's going to be up for people reading it to be like, to really go through how they feel about it.
Yeah. I do feel like I often kind of bring up this idea of when an author makes a decision like this, it has to be worth it. And I do think that's a hard thing to do. Like whether it's killing a character in not a suicide way or, you know, or in this case, I think it can be difficult to like make a decision to do something that could be negatively perceived by a reader. Like, I don't know how to put this right. Like, I just don't want to see things thrown away, I guess is what it is. Right? I don't want to see it's like, oh, I'm just like, I can, because I can, I do. And I don't necessarily feel like that's what this was either. Like, I think that's the other extreme of what something like this could be. But it's something I always want to think about when something like this happens is like, oh, like, did that really feel like, or like, not even that I go out of my way to think about it, but it just came up in this case. It was like, did that really feel like it was a worthy inclusion in the book to have this character commit suicide given the context? Like, did it make sense? You know, there's just a lot of things that inform that feeling of how do I come away feeling about that decision by the author, and how it makes me feel about the book at large. And in this case, I do think it's like better than a lot of other cases we've seen with that, with like a character dying or something bad happening in the book. But it did toe the line for me, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else to discuss? I feel like we did talk about the actual end a decent amount, too.
Yeah, we kind of talked about the end before, so that's fine. I guess we could just get into reviews.
So, I would say, overall, I really enjoyed reading this book. It kept me on my toes basically the whole time. I'm not kidding. My jaw was dropped during those last few chapters. And it's gotten me in a way, it surprised me in a way that I just haven't been surprised by books I've read in a long time. I didn't feel, even though it was about teenagers, like this wasn't for me to read as an adult too. So that was nice. So overall, really, really positive feelings about it. My downsides are probably just the having to read the suicide portion of the book. And this one thing that really makes this work is that Izzy kind of conveniently doesn't stew about who the actual murderer is throughout the book. And I think that is the only thing that I think feels a little bit too convenient. Not extremely so, but a little bit too convenient for my tastes. So overall, with just those little things, I think I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay. This book I actually didn't have that many notes for. And maybe that's because I got lazy. But maybe it's also because I just kind of let myself enjoy it. Like, I got swept up in it a bit. And I obviously still took notes. I did try and figure some things out. But I didn't, like, reread bits. I didn't take that many notes. I kind of just went through it. So for me, and also as well, it was so surprising. Like, we were talking up the ability to plot twist when you already know who the murderer is. The second part, so much was going on in so many different ways, and it was crazy.
And the author got us on that because she wasn't the murderer.
For sure. It was just such a well-planned, well-written book. So for me, I'm gonna give this book a 5-star.
Whoa. A full 5.
High for me, I know.
Wow. I rarely rate under you, I feel.
Yeah, I just, like, had so much fun. And there were the moments that, like, made me a bit emotional, like, with Izzy's family, like, that whole situation. And I think, similar to other 5s I've rated, this book would just be fun to read again.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about that. I bet you if I reread this book, it'd go up. Honestly. I bet you after seeing all of the plants and everything that I missed, it would go up to at least a 4.5.
Yeah, it was just a good time. I'm excited for if this author does more stuff.
Me too.
They do.
Me too.
Because this was incredible.
Yeah. So we're going to end the episode a little bit different this time with sort of a version of Rose Thorn Bud, which some of you out there may have used as a reflection in a group setting, maybe in college or something like that. But we're going to apply it to the book. So the way it'll work is we'll give a rose, which is something that was like a real highlight for the book, a thorn, something that was our kind of downside, didn't feel great about in the book, and then a bud. And in this case, buds, you're usually looking towards the future. We don't necessarily know when books are going to get sequels, and I don't think this is one that will. But this will be the idea of what do we hope happens for the characters or a character in this book in their future. And I should probably start this to give the example, right?
I will also say we planned this like just before we started recording, so yep. I have nothing planned. So hopefully it makes sense.
And we've tackled some of these categories throughout the discussion as well, but we're gonna give it a go. So I would say the rose, which is kind of our good vibe. The rose for me is actually what we were just talking about, which is the motivation to reread this book. And I'm almost wishing I had done it before we recorded the episode. I wish I had done a whole second read through. I feel like I've been looking for a book that deserves a reread for a while. This is one that I generally get my books from the library and usually in audiobook form. This is one I'm going to be buying for the shelf. So that's a big positive. I would say the thorn for me, definitely the suicide scene. I know I talked about it already, but oof, that just wasn't it for me. That's like definitely a sensitive spot and I didn't want it. I did not want it addressed. So, and then I would say the bud for me is, I don't know which characters I even want to talk about. There's so many that I want good things for. I think I really want Izzy to take like a gap year, like she talks about going to school in the fall feels way too soon. And I agree. And I hope that her family's in a situation where this is a possible thing for her. But like take just a year to like connect with her family and like just be with them and Kaye and like just existing in Mexico together and making up for all this lost time where she didn't even know she had an aunt or whatever other family might be down there for her before she does still like get the chance to carve her own path. I hope she still does go to college. And my bias is that she comes back up to Brown, but even if she doesn't, that she's able to kind of make her own way, even if it comes with sort of the bittersweetness of her mom being in jail. So
that's crazy. Crazy way to end that sentence. For me, okay, the rose is, I want to pick things I haven't talked about yet. I think how kind of ridiculous some of the drama was, like the side characters, right? Chloe and Fergus and Ellison. It's almost funny how teenager they were.
I agree.
Like with the itching solution and Fergus and Ellison, just their whole vibe going on. And the fact that this is like a perfectly written mystery, but then it's also so, I think, real to what the teenage experience is like. Like it's filled with petty drama, right? If you excuse all the actual crime being committed. So the fact that we're able to have kind of that ridiculous stuff that's also well written, I think. Like all of these side characters are given very genuine backstories and like motivations, and Ellison especially I think is a very interesting character. And if I may just skip to my bud.
Oh yeah.
Something I just want is, I do want Ellison to kind of get away from his mom. Like, that was such an interesting relationship, and maybe it's because of everything we're seeing about child stars right now.
Yeah.
And how dark a lot of that is. Just, he basically is one, right? Even though he's in athletics. And his mother being his agent, like, I just want better for him. He loves the rowing. He wants to go to the Olympics. I do think that's accurate. I don't think he's being forced to do these things, right. But he's being put in such a difficult situation, and he doesn't have a good like work-home balance, basically. And his mom is kind of controlling almost every aspect of his life. And we don't know what she's going to say about this Fergus-Ellison relationship. I'm assuming nothing good, but I'm not necessarily saying like an entire cutoff, but the repairing of that relationship, him finding an actual agent, and Ellison and Fergus just kind of, it'd be nice if they worked out. They both definitely need therapy, but I just want better for him.
Yeah, like Ellison getting a chance to take over his own life.
Yeah. The thorn is, obviously there's a lot I loved about this book. So my thorn is going to be kind of nitpicky, and it's actually going to feel like a contradiction to something I said before. But the Marlowe and Isidore relationship, I mean, I was playing contrarian a lot, I feel like, but you are kind of right. It is a relationship kind of built on nothing, and I think that's fine. They're in high school.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be super deep, and it doesn't have to be logical in why they like each other. But it would have been nice to maybe have more flashbacks of some reasons why Izzy liked Marlowe. Like, we kind of got a picture of why Marlowe liked Izzy.
Yeah.
And the flashbacks at Pegasus Books were from his point of view for the most part, I think. But we didn't really get any of that from Izzy. So it was hard to gauge her. And it could just be nothing. He just could be cool. And that's fine, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more. And maybe that's a bit of a bud too. Their relationship getting better.
Mhm. I like that as a bud as well. I think there's not nothing there, but just their interest in each other is, I feel like, built on nothing. So that's the hard part. But there's definitely room for them to grow.
Yeah.
And I'll throw one more rose in just because, so we can end on a high note, which is silly and like, I'll just say it. So I was dying when Pilar was doing the last sort of rounds and saying, the summary, and was just absolutely calling Fergus out at the beginning of it. Because, I mean, the poor kid with his own anger issues, but it was really funny to just see her like dig in and see him break down finally. Because it was like, why are you even holding back? I don't know. I just thought it was the drama I was looking for.
I think that was about like the watch, right? He was still trying to lie.
It was a lot. It was just such a spicy moment, and I just really appreciated it.
Honestly, yeah, Pilar is like so sick of all of them lying about such petty bullshit.
Yes. She's like, I actually don't care about your petty bullshit.
Yeah. She's like, oh, you're sleeping together? Okay. Somebody got murdered.
Haven't
Let's
heard
talk
that one
about
before. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, great character too, also. Pilar. I liked her.
Yeah. So that is Suddenly a Murder. It was a great time. We were right. It was the vibes we needed. Yep. And then next month it's our month, John, finally.
How exciting.
So we're reading If Tomorrow Doesn't Come by Jen St. Jude. Up to the chapter or the section, 6 months to impact, whatever that means. The book is basically 2 girls, women. I don't remember how old they are, but one of them is planning to end their life, so
Woohoo.
We got another one of those. We didn't mean
to.
Yeah, sorry. But she and the world learn that there's only days until like an asteroid hits the Earth and basically kills everybody. So she's planning to just survive those few days instead of taking her own life, and apparently other stuff happens in regards to her family and this person she's apparently in love with. It's a story of hope, apparently, so,
Mm-hmm.
As always, if you have your own thoughts about this book or your own theories about the next book, it is 5050_books on Twitter. And we also obviously we've been putting some book descriptions in the description now. So it's not a complete us just giving the title and giving no other information. And then we always have like the trigger warning, content warnings. Sometimes sites don't include all of them.
Yeah,
for this one, we've included the suicide not on page and also the student-teacher relationship. So we tacked that onto the first episode, tack it on for this one. But we try our best. It's hard to know until we read it, as you can imagine. That's going to be that.
All right. Bye-bye.